Jay, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I heard it was hot, so I prepared an extra T-shirt, but it's not that bad.
All right, yeah, we'll see when we get cooking. So we're just gonna jump right into it. So, as you can see in the highlight, there was a big moment with the New York Knicks and Linsanity. I know how much you love it, Jay. But can you please just take us back, just for a quick moment, on what was most surprising about that whole experience for you, personally or professionally?
The most surprising thing was that I didn't feel like I was any different, but all of a sudden the world sees me as different. And it's like, how do you kind of justify those two things? Literally, like the day before, I was like walking down the street in New York City going to Papaya Dog. Nobody knew who I was. I couldn't even get into Madison Square Garden because they were like, oh, like this is where the players enter, like you're not allowed here. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, it's like, Linsanity, right? And I think it's just like, how do you justify all those things and how do you maintain a sense of kind of identity, stay grounded? And I know I hate giving this answer. In general, I don't talk that much about Linsanity, but it's a super Debbie Downer answer. But one of the things that stuck out to me the most was how empty the success was. Because it was so fleeting and it was almost like chasing the wind. And it was like, man, I just scored 30 points, but we have a game in 2 days, or it's a back-to-back, so, or I had a great season, and it's like, man, like as much love as I got, every time you get love, there's gonna be this other like side of hate that comes, and it was like, oh, I had a good season, I gotta have a great season next year, and so just the fleetingness of the success, which part of that is just the nature of, the fleetingness of materialistic success, which is something you kind of have to learn the hard way. And the other one is just my own personality of just feeling like there was always more to do. And so that's something that we'll probably jump into later down the road too.
So with the successes, like as you were going through that whole process, what I'm curious about is how did you stay grounded through the highs of Linsanity, or even let's just speak about the career, some of the highs and some of the lows. How do you stay grounded throughout the whole process?
I think the biggest thing I had to do was keep people around me who would just shoot me straight. That's so important. And I used to really not like people who, just basically just like a buzzkill, like, oh, you didn't do this well, or you need to think about this, or, just constant challenges, and that would really bother me. But having that in my life really, really helped me. And the other thing is, when I was chasing the NBA dream so hard to the point where, like, before Linsanity, when we had the NBA lockout, for 9 straight months, I was doing like 3 workouts a day. I'm saying like morning, early afternoon, late afternoon, and it was just like this nonstop for 9 straight months because I just wanted something so bad. And like, to me, it was just like getting all of that and then feeling empty made me think about like, who am I beyond basketball, outside of basketball? And so that really allowed me to tap into my faith. And so that was and that's a lifelong journey, but it was a multi-year journey where I was able to really figure out, who am I, Jeremy the person, and not Linsanity. And Linsanity cast such a big shadow, over the rest of my career. For the first few years after Linsanity, I was just so bitter and angry because it felt like I could never create a moment bigger than that. And so it felt like no matter what, from here, it's all downhill. And I was trying so hard to like avoid that, but the biggest thing I had to do was not necessarily avoid that, I had to just get more comfortable with who I was.
Man, well, with that, like, what I want to make sure here is I want to get perspective from the audience, because I'm sure that landed home for a lot of people. How many parents are in the house right now? Like, how many of y'all have children? Can we get the hands up, please? Yeah. Okay. And so I guess it kind of bridges into, for yourself, I know you just announced on social that you're a father, you're a husband. Give me a hand. It was super beautiful to see it, like you having to balance the playoff intensity in Taiwan and then trying to be a dad and a husband. And what I'm curious about is, how has that changed your perspective on life?
Yeah, bad days at work just don't hit the same. You get home, I see my son, and I'm just like, I think the biggest thing about parenting so far, even though I'm only 4 months in, is just that everyone's just laughing at me. They're like, They're like, that doesn't even count as parenting. You didn't even know what parenting is. So I know, why you set me up with this question? Look at everybody laughing at me. Shoot.
Hey, I
Anyway,
apologize.
next one, Joey, let's go. I mean, the biggest thing is he's a constant mirror for me. Like, it's always a mirror towards myself. And I think that's true about leadership, right? Leadership, parenting is leadership, but like any type of leadership is always a mirror. And I used to think like I'm dealing with somebody or something and it's like, I gotta fix that thing. But I realized like through the course of my career that like every person, every situation, everything is really more a reflection of who I am and whether I can handle that or how it's affecting me. Am I giving something too much real estate in my mind? Am I trying to force the issue when I really need to let go? Things like that. But parenting is just a constant mirror, and the biggest one has been for me is how selfish am I? Truthfully, right? Like that's been the biggest thing is like I had my rhythm, I've had my career, everything has catered around, you know, my training and my rehab and this for as long as I've known it. And all of a sudden, you know, little man comes along and it's like, dang, like, every day I'm asking myself, like, am I selfish? Am I too selfish? You know, and it's a constant mirror.
I know I hit you with that one, but
no worries. Hopefully I got some respect from the parents that have been parenting for longer than 4 months.
No, but it was dope, man. It was you know, just being in Taiwan, and I think that's why not one of the reasons why I respect you, but like you were so nurturing even of like me. Like, I'm like trying to help him out through the playoffs and he's like worrying, hey Joe, you good, man? You miss Jen? Like how you doing with the family? Like, do I need to send you home? Like, if we lose, you know, if we lose then you can go home. I'm like, bro, I'm good, man. I'm
like, do you want me to throw this game so you can go see Jen?
No, it was like really beautiful to see so up and close, man. And so yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, no.
And so we're gonna do a little like pivot, not really so much a pivot because you kind of touched on this with like the whole insanity thing, but this is more about like being so front and center. And I think a lot of us can relate on different wavelengths on social media. Just being, if you're putting yourself out there, you're essentially vulnerable for criticism, right? So if you're stepping in, you're leaning in. Get ready for it, right? Because if you keep doing it with grace, there's still going to be people that come after you. And I think that's an important distinction to realize. And with you, with being in such a big stage, what have you done, or what is the most like challenging aspects of that? Hearing media say all these different things about you that may or may not be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think tuning out the noise is just something that is so like it's just like something that I hope to instill in my son and in any, you know, it's just like being able to tune out the noise is something that's so important. For me, by nature, naturally, I am a more sensitive person when it comes to certain things, right? Like when I used to read stuff on my social media, if I had 99 people say good things about me and then one person say like, he's overrated, he da-da-da-da-da-da-da, it would like, I would only think about that one. I wouldn't think about the 99, right? And I knew that, and I started to realize that about myself. And so I started to have to put in different parameters around kind of certain things. And so one thing I kind of put in within myself was like, in season, I'm not gonna read anything good or bad that any fan, any media member, any journalist, any commentator, nothing about me in season. I just tune it out because I need to show up for my team and I need to be the purest version of myself, meaning I'm here just to win. If I have some stuff coming in, and I've seen the flip side, right? I've seen teammates, they're in there scrolling Twitter, X, right?
Don't say like MySpace, that's like way back.
They're scrolling their social media at halftime, and they're looking at what fans are saying. And I'm like, dang, that's really like, there's too much real estate. And so to me, just really learning how do I tune out the noise. I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm this like super tough, like, and I got it all figured out and I'm impenetrable in terms of like my mental psyche. Like, no, the comments affect me, the haters affect me. And so I've realized like I need to block that out and be active and proactive about that. And so that's one of the things that I did early on. But in addition to that, I think one thing that I've always tried to stay true to is, I love this book, Vulnerability is Strength by Brene Brown. And it just talks about actually the people who are the strongest are the ones who are willing to be vulnerable. And through my social media, I just try to be vulnerable, meaning I don't always post the good. And like when I deal with stuff, like I just try to be open about it. And so one of the things that through the years, I guess like a lot of the people who followed me, they really appreciate is like, man, you feel like, I feel like it's authentic. And that's also been a difference maker for me in how I view, forget about like the followers. Even for me personally as a person, like being authentic and real on social media keeps me more grounded. Like we did one video, I remember we posted a video one time and it was all misses or me trying to learn new moves, almost falling over myself and things like that. And just for me to like do it, like I don't want to post that, but it's like, no, you gotta post it. It was like a challenge for myself to post it. Can you post it? I could post it. All right, I posted it and I'm just like, I want to delete it. You know what I mean? But like being able to get there was a challenge, a test to myself. I know you guys saw me with my crazy hairstyles, right? And people thought like, you know, I had super like close friends being like, yo, are you going through like a midlife crisis? Like, you good? Like, what's wrong with you, right? And then like I got a lot of criticism from other former NBA players and things like that. And they're like, look at him, like he's trying to be so cool. And really actually a lot of it was a challenge to myself. Can I look like a fool and be okay with it? And there was one game where I wore like a double ponytail just to challenge myself. Like, are you okay with being laughed at? And then still just hooping. And so it was like, I was at a point where I was really trying to figure out like, how do I just, even if the whole world is against me, how do I just totally believe in myself, trust in myself, and just go for it? And so like, those are some of the kind of the little games and things that I was trying to see, like, are you able to do that? And it brought a different level of resilience, or just like, you know, focus on the right things. I'm prioritizing the right things, not so much about what the fans are thinking and more so about like what really matters.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I remember you, we were live in Taiwan posting, and Jay was just like, hey Joe, hey, I'm black on social media, like nothing's going on, so like I don't see anything, okay? And so here he is still being mindful of like even our whole team, you know, because like, you know, we're here in the Bay, just like I feel like we're just trying to get our first contract out here, you know? And like I think everyone on my team, extended family within the team, like with that, like you still had the awareness to actually nurture what I was feeling. And it's crazy because it's like, bro, just take care of the game. And so that's just a testament to Jay. But I think just kind of doubling down on all of that you just said, how do you manage your self-identity within this process of like hearing people say things about you, either behind closed doors or right in front in social or in the media? Like, what goes through your process as far as like your own identity? Like, do you have a checklist of like principles, characteristics that you want to abide by? What is it?
Yeah, and you know, I want to be respectful of everybody and not overly talk about my faith, but it's hard to not talk about my faith with this question. But the truth is, you know, when I started to get a lot of criticism, which really it all started when I left New York. Prior to that, I never knew how to handle criticism because there was none. Because I was Asian, playing basketball, and nobody gave a crap. And everywhere I went, nobody expected anything of me, right? So through middle school, high school, college, I'm just surprising everybody. Everybody's just basically saying like, he's better than I thought. He's better than I thought. He's better than I thought. It was all positive, right? Like obviously there's like the initial like lack of respect, but once I started hooping, they're like, he's better than I thought. So everything was always positive. All of a sudden, I signed with the Warriors, have a horrible season. Then I signed with the Knicks, have a great season, but then I leave New York. And then like, I could handle to some degree better, like if people said like, you just suck as a basketball player, or you can't do this, like you can't go left, or you can't shoot, I can handle that. But what I really couldn't handle was character. Like when they attacked my character. Like they told me like, oh, all he cares about is the money. That's why he's going to the Rockets. And I was like, you don't even know that, you know, and it was eating me up. Like it would eat me up because you're talking about who I am as like my character. And I didn't know how to handle that. And that's where I really had to get into, again, more of my faith. And the beautiful thing about faith for me with Christianity is that like, I just show up and I'm good enough. Like that's the essence of grace, right? It's completely undeserved. And so everything in sports, everything in this world is you go get what you want, you reap what you sow, you put in the work, you get results. And it's all about you striving and achieving. But then for the first time, I found like a deeper level of faith where it's like, dude, I can show up all of my bad and my messy and my ugly, and I'm still good enough. Like it was so hard to process that, right? Especially in a, what can you do for me? And you're only as good as your last game type of industry. And so like being able to lean into that more, not only did it make me just such a happier and more like a truly fulfilled human being, it actually made me play better too. Because like I was not coming from a place of trying to earn approval. I was coming from a, not a scarcity mindset. I came from a place of abundance where it was like, I'm already good enough, I'm already loved, and like no matter how today's game goes, it's not gonna change who I am. And it freed me. And I was able to really starting to enjoy the game, and I was playing better because of it. And so really like a lot of self-reflection, and literally what I would do, literally like very practically speaking, would be every day as I was going through the day, I would just say like, do your best for God. Like do your best for God. And when I played a game, I would say, play as hard as you can for God's glory. That's it. I didn't talk about scoring 20 points. I didn't talk about winning the game. I didn't talk about 10 assists. I talked about nothing other than play as hard as you can and try to give God as much glory. And then at night, before I went to sleep, I would just sit there in my bed and I would just like pray and reflect and be like, God, did I honor you today? Even if I had a horrible game and I was getting a ton of hate on social, like I could hold my head high and say like, dang, like God was really proud of me today. And so, I almost had to fake it till I made it, because truthfully, early on, it was like, I just care about like what the fans say about me. I just want to be liked. I just really want to be liked. I want to be loved. I want people to root for me. And eventually it actually started to become like a deep inner part of who I am. And now I'm in a much better place with all of that.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, man. I mean, we saw that firsthand, I think, when we were in Taiwan after the game, win or loss, we would be in the drive home, and before we would talk or anything, we would just do a prayer. He would call his wife, and then, we would be in the car, and Jeremy would just share words. And I think when you're in a space where I think you push yourself to that edge, right? Hearing those words, man, it's like, I think you helped me connect during that trip. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go too long here, but yeah, no, it was super special. And so like, that was like the post game. What I'm curious about leading up to the game, what does that preparation look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool that you guys got to hear from Graham. I've been looking for a new sports psychologist, and I actually had, I've had like 3 sessions with Graham. So if I'm repeating the same thing he said, I'm really sorry, because now you know where I'm getting my content from. I'm just stealing it from him. And I'm actually gonna record, like I'm in the process of recording this like 20 to 30 minute sharing that I'm gonna release before the start of next season. But I struggle a lot with pregame anxiety, like bad. And Joey's seen it like up close and personal to the point where like, I don't really want to talk. Like I can't even talk to anybody. I can't sleep well. I can't eat. Like when it's a really important game, the worse, like the bigger the game, the worse it gets. And he's seen it where it's like, I can't even show up to the gym. I don't go to the gym on the team bus at the normal time because they go like 90 to 120 minutes before the game. And if I sit there for that long, like they're on their phones playing like iPhone games or chilling or whatever, and it seems like everybody's cool. But I'll just be there in my thoughts and I'll overthink. And then by the time the game starts, I'll be drained, just drained. So I actually just arranged my own transportation. I spend as little time as I can at the arena. I get a quick warm up in, do my thing, listen to the coach talk. I get right into the game, and it allows me to feel fresher because that's how bad pregame anxiety is for me when it's at its worst. And that's just something that, like, again, like kind of, I guess going back to the previous answer that I gave, it's like, I knew that this is something that I should talk about, right? Like anxiety is a huge issue. In my philanthropic work with all the foundations, we're talking to all the grantees, we're like, what is the number one thing that you guys need after COVID? Or what's the thing that you struggle with the most after COVID? I'm expecting, we need money, we need funds. It's confidence, right? Like people are like, the kids need confidence, they need self-esteem. The kids are struggling with anxiety, AAPI youth anxiety, suicide rates are at like all-time highs, right? And so this is something that I was like, I gotta share it then. Like I have to talk about it. And it's, like some people put me up on this pedestal, and being vulnerable will take me off of this pedestal. But I think that, again, that's a challenge to myself. Can I do that? Like, can I be real? And so I struggle with pregame anxiety really, really badly. And that's why, you know, I've met with Graham 3 times, and I told him, like, when I get out back, you know, when next time it comes up, like, we definitely need to have some sessions. But there's a lot that I've done through the years of trying to manage it, and it's gotten better, but I always kind of figured like it would go away, right? Like early in my career, like my first year 1, year 2, year 3, I'm like, no, like it'll go away. I'm going into my 15th season. Like I'm gonna retire at any minute now, like, and I'm still dealing with it. And I've come to accept like anxiety will always be a part of me and my journey, but that's okay. And like Graham's been really encouraging me, like, yo, lean into it. Lean into the anxiety. Don't run from it, or don't let it make you feel like you're so inferior, or like, oh, is there something really wrong with you? Because the truth is, my anxiety is why I play so desperate. And I play desperate, and that's why I play so well. It's a part of, it's a strength. And reframing that anxiety and like how I respond to the pressure, how I respond to those fears, like it's a part of what makes me play harder naturally than other players. And there's a lot more in there, and I can go on, but that would kind of mess up the sharing that I'm about to release on social media. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We just don't have time for all that today.
No, I remember, I think we were going to we were going to the home arena in Taiwan. And at the time, our guy, JP, he's a videographer. So I was in the back seat, JP was in the back seat, and I think this is JP's first ride, and it's like super quiet in the car. And I'm already weekend, so I'm like, just like normal. Jeremy's like, again, he's like worrying about us. He turns around in the car, he's like, hey, y'all can talk, man. Like, cause we were like this.
I was like, hey, you guys aren't playing tonight, all right? You guys can talk. Like, I'll put my headphones in. My wife makes me a pregame playlist for my anxiety. I'm like, yo, just do what you want to do. Like, I'm gonna be I'm doing my breathing exercise. I'm doing my exercises, all right? I'm doing my meditations.
But then I was like, nah, I'm playing this game too. and JP was like, me too, bro. So we was all in the back, actually it was cool because I think like during the trip, bro, it was just like go, go, go. But then in the back seat, you were like, this is a place where I can get some quiet. And I just started to channel that within myself too. I was like, all right, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna sit back here. And so many times I would just kind of get quiet. Sometimes I would fall asleep. I would try meditation and prayer, but sometimes I would sleep. But no, it was a funny moment, but it also helped me appreciate how much you're locked in. Like, this guy doesn't play. Like leaning in, yeah, he was doing that all trip, and I was just trying to like figure out, man, how do I help this guy? And he's just locked in. I'm like, oh man, and I'm getting stressed out too, so I had to tap in too. So that's dope. But let's transition really quick to doubt. A lot of people can relate to this because if you're in this room, you're likely of someone that is about growth. And when you're about growth, you're likely putting yourself in situations where you're probably not the best in that arena. And when you're not the best in that arena, you have to be vulnerable to realize that you need to work on your game. And so with that, I'm curious, how do you overcome that like constant cycle of imposter syndrome and self-doubt? And I'm curious how you manage that.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. I know all about it because Linsanity. Literally, I was the most Googled, searched, popular person for that year. And it was like, I wasn't even a human. I was like a phenomenon. I was like a superhero. Like, that was what was cast onto me. So you want to talk about imposter syndrome, like, I know all about it, right? And it was like, how did I work through all of that, or how did I figure that out? The biggest thing I would say is put yourself in positions to fail and fail often. It's like the opposite answer from which people want to hear. But the reality is anybody, and I think you guys all know this, anybody who's been successful has failed many times along the way. But it's the person that seeks out failure, right? Like, and one classic example is just learning a language, right? You learn a language, and it's the people who are like constantly trying it, speaking it, and they're saying it, and it sounds horrible, but they're still, and those are the people that learn the language the fastest, improve the most, because they're constantly failing and they're putting themselves in positions of vulnerability and failure, and they're working through that. And I think, to me, that's just as I've tried to kind of progress through the years as a basketball player, it's like, how can I put myself in more and more positions where I might fail? And obviously it's like, if it's game 7 of the playoffs, I probably won't be seeking like new shot opportunities and exploring my game, right? But in my training, in my off season, like it is so frustrating sometimes because like I'm limiting, I don't allow myself to use my strengths, and then I feel like I don't even know how to play basketball, and then I get really upset and I get really frustrated. But that's just part of the progression of growth. And so to me, I just encourage you guys, put yourself in positions of failure, and as you work through that, like, you know, redefine that failure as steps, like literally steps headed in the right direction, steps to growth. Like I'm actually improving every time I fail because I'm forced to figure it out, and I'm improving without realizing it. It's hard because you're improving without a result. And so to me, doubt, you know, and going back to this anxiety thing is like, there's an affirmation that I give myself before every game, and I truly believe it. I have the worst pregame anxiety probably of anybody on that floor, but I also believe I'm the most mentally strong person on that floor. And I'm like, nobody is going to out mental me once the game starts. Like I'm going to be the strongest person because I feel like I've wrestled with that doubt. I've leaned into that doubt. I've come face to face with that doubt more times, and I've been more willing to than other people. And like, that's why I just feel in my heart like I'm more mentally strong than other people. And one classic, like to draw an analogy very practically, is when I was young in my career, if I missed my first 4 shots from the outside, I'm not shooting another outside shot. I'm telling myself, it's not your night. Take it to the rim. And then I remember by the time I got to like my 5th or 6th season in the NBA, one of my most proud games, one of my best games in my opinion, was when I went 0 for 10 against the Washington Wizards, and I was so proud of myself because I shot 10 shots. Because when I was younger, I would have stopped at 3 or 4, but I was like, I'm still gonna keep shooting 5, 6, 7, and none of them went in. I went 0 for 10. Everybody was laughing at me and being like, you know, obviously a lot of hate, but I was so proud of myself because I was like, I'm still taking the shots that I know I can and should make. And then this past season in the playoffs, game 4, I start off the game 0 for 10. And every time I shoot it and miss, you can hear it. We're at home. And when I miss, the home fans are like, oh, like you can hear it with every miss that goes on. We get into the 4th quarter and I'm just telling myself, you're a killer and you're mentally stronger than anybody else. And I just keep telling myself, you're a killer, you're a killer. I'm built for this, I'm built for this. And it's like, and I have every last doubt and fear coming into my mind at that moment, right? But in those moments, it's like, it's not about, you know, because I realize if I listen to myself, I'm listening to a lot of negativity because I'm naturally just very hard on myself, and I naturally come from a place of like inferiority, doubt, and fear. So if I'm listening to myself, I'm in trouble. So I always tell myself, like, talk to yourself so you're not listening to yourself. So I was really in that 4th quarter, I was like, you're a killer. You're a killer. You're built for this. This is your time, and blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, things turned around. I scored 7 straight, put away the game. And to me, that was another example of like, the mental work that I had put in, just being in those positions of failure, knowing I've been down this path before, like I'm comfortable, I'm okay with this. I definitely, you know, encourage you guys in whatever field that you're in, like continue to seek out those opportunities for failure and see them as steps of growth and improvement.
I think like let's click into that because I think a lot of people here are either part of a team at their work, maybe in sports, or they're an entrepreneur building a team. So I'm curious, in your eyes, like what creates a winning culture and what creates success within an organization or a team?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the Instagram Live, but I read a lot of books on leadership because I probably just like, you know, that was just something that as I got older in my career, I realized I had to get a lot better at. But essentially, like scientifically speaking, joy-based leadership is much more effective than fear-based leadership. That's just like a fact. It's a scientific fact. The brain, the way it operates, it categorizes experiences in different categories, and like joy-based experiences are the best. They make you the most free, the most confident, and you perform the highest in those places. So in a culture, how are you facilitating joy? Right? And that doesn't mean that you don't have confrontation. That doesn't mean that you don't have challenges. Like, I'm not saying turn a blind eye, because you also need tremendously high accountability. But how do you do that in a way where you are producing joy? And one thing I talk a lot about is the difference between Eastern culture, like Eastern, not like East Coast. I'm saying like Asia, just to, like Asia and like East and West in terms of like the basketball, what I've seen from the basketball industry. Like a lot of my teammates as I played in Asia, there's so much fear going on and so much of the coaching is about fear. And it's all about, you know, if you win, I'll give you a bonus. And if you lose, you don't get to see your family during Chinese New Year, or like, you know, things like that. Like just very tremendous. It's basically like, yeah, they'll play hard. They want to see their family. But that's not producing joy in the long run. And what happens is a lot of my teammates have lost their joy for the game because they've been in such a fear-based culture for so long. Not only that, they're getting capped. They put themselves in boxes. And so short term, you get all of a sudden, hey, I threatened that they couldn't see their families and they came out on fire and we won the game. And it's like, okay, next time we know what we need to do. Don't let them see their families or threaten to, right? Like, and that's just kind of like been some of the fear-based, this is like literally on teams that I've been on, this has been some of the things I've experienced. And that's obviously like an extreme, but nuance-wise within your workplace, how are you creating it so that everybody around you is feeling more joy, more confidence, and even when they're not and they need to be challenged and they need to be brought up and they need to get better, how do you do it in a way where you're creating a lot of joy? I mean, that is a science in and of itself. You know, it's really, really hard to do. It requires a tremendous amount of patience and a tremendous amount of awareness as well. But like I would say that when you go to work, if you want to really be a part of building culture, you really have to start by thinking a lot more about other people. And that's hard to do sometimes, you know, like I like to go into my work and I want my body, I want my knee, I want my shot, I want everything functioning the way, and I'm thinking about myself and priming myself. But to really be an additive to culture, I gotta open my lens and really figure out how to handle both, just bringing my best self and building culture and making sure I'm lifting the people up around me. One simple goal that I have for myself every season is lead the team in assists. Lead the team in high fives and lead the team in compliments, and also assists. Lead the team in high fives and lead the team in compliments. Just physical touch, verbal affirmation. Can I lead the team? Can I be the most vocal in those areas? That's just a simple goal I have. And one more story is this past season, I had gotten feedback that as I was coming back from injury, some of the younger teammates were a little bit afraid when I was coming back from injury because they were afraid of me yelling at them. And like, you know, I was really shocked and I was like, oh really? Like, I don't feel like I yell that much. But the reality is I had to understand that the position that I was in as player number one, even if I was just talking, and saying like, hey, like, come on now, you gotta know the plays. Like the power dynamic can make that statement much different. And so like learning the nuances of how I connect with each player and where you are at in your company and where you are in the hierarchy and how do you talk to the people underneath you, how do you talk to people at the same level, and how do you talk to people above you. These are all very important skills and things that you have to kind of figure out. And so I actually did a formal apology in front of everybody. I brought in like the training staff, the coaching staff, the strength staff, and I gave an apology. I said, hey, I've heard that a few of the young players are afraid. I'm saying this in front of you all, keep me accountable. If you feel like I'm being too hard on any player, anybody has the right to say something to me. And that really changed, that shifted how a lot of my teammates saw me. Like the fact that I was willing to do that, they were like, oh, like he did that. And I think that was just, you know, that was a moment where like the culture really started to shift in a positive direction. Just, hey, nobody's above anybody in the sense of like, we're all equals. Like none of us can be toxic, right? We all have a standard that we have to be a part. It doesn't matter if you start or you don't play at all.
I'm curious, as you're talking about this and leadership within like the locker room and within the team, how does this apply to like family?
Well, I have no standing in my family. I'm the middle child, so you know, just in terms of how do I create that culture in family?
Yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Man, family. I'm super close with my family. It's very interesting because once the insanity happened, like you could see like power dynamic shifts. Like even though I was a middle child, it was like, okay, Jeremy's career is kind of more important. What's Jeremy got going on? Oh, and all of a sudden like a lot of meals was me paying for them, or, you know, paying for certain, and it was all of a sudden, you know, and now like my parents got laid off and so like all these things are kind of shifting, you know, and there's another great book called I Hear You. And it just basically talks about how the basis of every human relationship, every human interaction and any form of communication, like if I talk to you, the one thing I want is just to be heard. That's it. Like in every single interaction you could have with another human being, the one thing you want is to be heard. And I had to learn, how do I allow all my different family members with different personalities, with different baggage, with different trauma, how do I make sure that they know I hear them? And so that was like, and it still is a lifelong process, but obviously I've gotten better through the years, but that's just one example of how do I create that type of culture. Yeah, figure out how do you let the people know, how do you let the people around you really feel that you're hearing them?
Obviously I've got a chance to spend time with your family, and it's been amazing, and seeing the dynamic of it. And I think that a lot of people in these seats right now probably struggle with certain things too, right? Like as you start to grow and expand, how do you remain empathetic and compassionate to what they've gone through or what they've done to get you to here, and I think it's just such a process of going through your own process to see it in a different lens. And so it's pretty cool to kind of hear that perspective. I do want to transition here. Can you share, we're going to go into like more of the business side of things that you're involved in. And I'm curious, can you share a little bit more about Jalen Foundation and also Jalen LLC, and what things, maybe in the mental health and community support, like what kind of things are y'all getting involved in?
Yeah, the Jalen brand is just something that we've started once I became, a rookie, from rookie, year 1 until now going into year 15. And I always describe it into like multiple arms. There's, we have a for-profit arm. So actually, let me rewind first. Going back to my faith, the goal of the Jalen brand is to redefine love for the next generation. That's an insane goal. Like it's way too big, but I think that's what goals should be. They should be pretty dang big. And so for us, is to redefine love for the next generation. What is that? Why? How do we get there? I just felt like, I always felt like growing up, it's like, I love you because you're funny, you're awesome, you're generous. Like, I always thought love was something, you love something or you love somebody because of their positives. And as I got older, I realized true love is, I love you despite all your weaknesses. I think that's actually what love is about. And I think that's the love that I experienced in my faith. And so how do I bring that level? How do I bring that type of tough, sacrificial love and try to spread, obviously imperfectly, but how do I spread it to the world through the brand? And so we have a for-profit arm where we have impact investing. We have a capital studio. And basically, we're trying to do things very differently than the typical investor, but we're really trying to, use investments and capital to really help the world and help the next generation in a positive way, to really love on the founders, right? Like one thing I've noticed is like, okay, if a founder who is very similar to a professional athlete, there's a lot of parallels, there's a ton of pressure. Like if a founder creates a great product, has a great ROI, but has no work-life balance, and then loses their family, but has a great company, like are they successful? Right? Like, I don't know, like if I'm a great player, but I'm a horrible husband and a horrible father, like how successful am I? And so these are some of the questions that we're trying to like wrestle with. But that's the capital studio. Then there's the nonprofit arm, which is the foundation, which is like basically, that's like my baby. The foundation I started from right away. My first thing I did in East Palo Alto was teamed up with Dele and Team Isfachi. So shout out to them. But we've been really, we have a whole thing that we're doing in the Bay Area, targeting different grantees. We focus a lot on AAPI youth, but we also focus a lot on solidarity because we think solidarity is just so important. Basketball has given me access to solidarity in new ways. That's what we have going on. And then we have a Stronger Together collaborative where we have, in New York City. And so, the Bay and New York City are 2 of the top 3 AAPI-centric cities in the entire US. And my stories resonate with 2 of those 3 areas, and so we've put a lot of time and energy into those places. But you know, there's more, and then there's like kind of the endorsement side, and then there's the storytelling side. You know, we've had different documentaries or books or whatever. Like, we haven't written books yet, but that's down the road. But we've had documentaries. We had one recently that came out, 38 at the Garden. You know, there's kind of just me as a basketball player. So there's all these different arms that we have going on.
Dope. All right, thanks, Jeremy. All right, before we go to the Q&A, one last question before we start handing out to people in the audience to ask you some questions. Reflecting on all that in your journey, if you were looking at the young Jeremy, 15 years old, Palo Alto High School, if you had an opportunity to talk to him, what would you say?
I know, right? Slow down. Slow down. And, you know, you can't slow down time, but you can slow down your posture, how you go through life. I'm so driven, I'm so ambitious, and I just wish I slowed down. And I wish I was more intentional about that at a much younger age. I feel like early on, my best moments, I didn't even soak them in. I didn't even cherish them. I didn't even sit in them. They kind of just came and went. And now I try to be much more cognizant of celebrations and celebrating little things that I might not even feel like, you know, I'm the type of guy where it's like, when I graduated from high school, I was like, I don't want to go to my graduation. My parents are like, why? It's like, I mean, I should graduate. Like, most people graduate. Like, it's not you don't have to celebrate that, right? Like, that was kind of my mentality, was just like, if everybody else is, most people are doing it, and that's not healthy. I don't encourage that, right? But that's just something for me. It was like, I always felt like, I always pursued like excellence at the perfectionist level. That was just like how I was wired. And so I would just really encourage myself to slow down. And the other thing that I think that's been really crucial to me is just leaning into professionals. I used to be very against, you know, therapists, sports psychologists, marriage counselor, those types of things, because I felt like it was a shot to my ego maybe that I couldn't figure it out. I can tell you, like, after investing into therapy, after having a sports psychologist, me and my wife, we started marriage counseling on day one of our marriage. We were like, we will not wait, like, we can get better now. I know there's a lot of privilege with that advice because I'm fortunate enough to be able to have the resources to do that. But I think maybe the heart of what I'm trying to say is be willing to lean into other people, right? It doesn't have to be a professional, but be willing to lean into the people around you, be willing to invest into community. That's one thing, that's a big reason why I'm here at Motion Collab, because I'm just like, community is so important. Doing things together, learning from each other, going through life together. I think that's just really, really important. And I was pretty resistant to that. And I think it's because early on in my journey, I was always the Asian kid who had to find his own way. So I had this whole like mentality of like, I don't need anybody. I've made it this far by myself. I don't need you. Like, don't try to come in, you know, like once I made it. And I had to get broken down and I had to be humbled. And I'm just telling you, therapy, sports psychology, marriage counseling, even pouring into friends, being vulnerable with friends, having them walk through with me and my family through different seasons of life, it's been a game changer.
Thanks, Jay. Let's bring it happen. So we're gonna get into the Q&A.
Hi, Jeremy. So I know a lot of times in your content or your interviews, you talk a lot about like pushing through adversity. And obviously, like, I've been following your journey even after you left the NBA, all your highs and lows in the CBA, and then going back to the G League, and then, you know, pursuing a career in the Plus League. I just wanted to know, like, can you give us a specific example of a time, maybe after the NBA, where you handled adversity, and just like the things you the measures you took to overcome those things?
Yeah, I mean, the one that immediately jumps off the bat. So I was hurt for 2 straight years with the Brooklyn Nets. I go to Atlanta. I'm finally back. I missed 130 games in 2 seasons. I finally get healthy, but I'm just not the same player. I play 1 season. I win a championship, but I don't contribute to the team. I'm just cheering the whole time. I don't get on the floor at all. And then I'm out the NBA. Then I go to the CBA where, you know, I am arguably the best Asian guard of all time ever, is how some people view me, right? And I have that type of pressure of like going into the CBA. And what I started to realize was like I had so much doubt. And I remember like vividly remembering like in the fourth quarter, I would be hoping that if it was a close game, the coach wouldn't sub me in. I was hoping that I wouldn't take that last shot because what happens if I miss? And so I was dealing with like a fear that I didn't know where it came from. I never really struggled with that. Like I'm normally the player who's like, I want that last shot. You know what I mean? You better put me in the game. That's like kind of my mentality. And so right as that happened, COVID hit and things shut down and our season paused for like half a year. And that's the first time I went to sports psychology. I found a sports psychologist. And the very first thing he had me do, and it's like the worst exercise ever, he made me write down all the ways I've been hurt in my career, all the fears that I've been dealing with. And he made me write it down. I had a long list of people that had hurt me. And he made me call every single one of them to reconcile. And I was like, I'm not doing that. He's like, I don't even need to talk to them. And he's like, this isn't about them. This is about you. Do you want to get to another height? Like there's things that you're carrying from your past. Like all the adversity that you've been through. And that's one thing that like people on my business team, they always challenge me with. They're like, dude, you've had so much pressure on you for so long. And there's such a cost of being the first or the only. Like when you're the first, whatever, or you're the only whatever, like that takes a toll on you. And that's why like founder life, entrepreneurs, like that's why it's so hard. It's like you're the only, like you're a founder, it's all on your shoulders. Being in that type of environment for a long time, going through adversity, is not like, it comes at a cost. And so I had to go back and reconcile. And everybody who was either not alive or would refuse to kind of get in touch with me or wouldn't hit me back, I had to visualize a reconciliation. I was much more down with the visualization than the actual. But there were some awkward conversations in the beginning, but I'm telling you, every single one of them ended like I was lifting bricks off my shoulder that I didn't even know I carried through all the different adversity. Somebody replaced me, right? Like I was on a team and then somebody took my spot. Like having a conversation, figuring out, letting that go. Now I'm not as afraid of another teammate taking my spot or me getting injured and being replaced. Like, man, this stuff was powerful for me. It really lifted weights off my shoulder. And that's one of the biggest things, a very simple anecdote of how I was able to fight through certain adversity.
From your multicultural background, I'm curious to understand, how has your journey through playing professional basketball all around the world in multiple cultures, how has that shaped the process, how you kind of prepare to be a player in a league?
It's interesting because when I was growing up in the US playing basketball, I was always called the Chinese kid or the Asian kid, right? I was never a basketball player. I was like, yo, that's the Asian kid. So it had this like, I didn't belong feeling. And I was like, all right, well, I'm out the NBA. I dealt with that for 30 years. I'm out the NBA now. I go to the CBA and I'm like, all right, I'm finally around Chinese speaking people. And they're like, oh, he's the American. He's the ABC too, right? Or in literally my status, right? You have locals and you have foreigners, and you can only have, you can only register, 4 foreigners. And it was like, oh, he's a foreigner. I was like, oh, that was anticlimactic. Then I went to P League, right? And I was like, okay, well in the P League I have a Taiwan passport, so I'm actually considered a local. But it's the same thing. They're just like, oh, you're an ABC, you're an American, right? And so it just felt like, I was like so proud of kind of being multicultural, but then I realized like, I don't have a home anywhere. I don't really belong anywhere. And I was like, again, it was like I really struggled with that for a long time, and it really ate at me, and it was like very hard to deal with, and I would always complain about it behind the scenes because, there's just so many differences of like, if they don't see you as like a local, like there's just barriers in the way that you treat each other, the way that you play together. But I realized like, actually, I'm leaning into that now. It's what makes me a great leader, is because I can bridge. So I'm not A, but I'm not B, but I'm the bridge in between. And so now I just lean right into that. And I feel like that's like what makes me super unique. That's what makes me special, is that I can bridge local to foreigner. I can bridge foreigner to coach. I can bridge locals to the coach. I can bridge so many different levels now because I have experience and respect from different cultures. And so that's something that as an immigrant coming to the US, or even as a woman in a in a male-centric industry, or anytime you don't look the part, like it's an opportunity to bridge, essentially. How do you educate the people around you? How do you be a bridge?
I guess this is a question on behalf of all of us, because we're all health and wellness professionals here. What's your thought process in choosing a professional to work with?
In a professional to work with?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's the obvious skill component, right? And like, I don't entrust my body to anybody, like lightly. I can go on and on about Joey and Progressive Motion, but then it sounds like a sales pitch, but I work with him 3 times a week. I fly him out. He works on me and all my teammates. My teammates who are, injured, he still oversees their rehab. Like that should say it all in terms of skill. But the other thing I really care a lot about is character, values. One thing that I've seen time and time again in the professional setting is you compromise too much culture because someone is talented and really good. And I'm just telling you, in the long run, that's just not it. That's not the answer. And I won't be unrealistic. I won't be overly idealistic. When you got some dude who can really hoop, you'll give up a little bit of culture. You know what I mean? Like, he's just that good. Like, he can get away with showing up late sometimes or whatever. But when I think about, like, really who do I want to partner with? Like, because there's a difference between, like, a short term, like, oh, we're working together. When I'm thinking about, like, truly partnering with people, it just comes down to values and character. And when you find like-minded people, when you find people who you really like connect with and care about, and that's the one thing about Progressive Motion, Team Isfachi, like Joey cares about, there's no doubt in my mind that Joey cares about me as a person. It's not what can I do for him. So when we do talk about stuff like me showing up to this collab, and there is like, what can you do for Progressive Motion? It's never bigger than like our friendship, and I truly believe that. And that to me is like, I'm willing to rock with that and work with that, and I really try to seek that out. And when you kind of approach your work as, in health and wellness, for example, if you approach your client not as like, what can you do for me, or not transactional, they feel that, and that's a game changer. And so obviously you still got to be good, you still got to have skills, but beyond that, that's really important to me.
Jeremy, you shared so much game, so many messages, so many pieces of advice. What would you say is one of your best pieces of advice that you've received in your path to success?
Ooh, one of the best pieces of advice. I don't know if this is a piece of advice, but it was an example. My senior year in high school, we went 32-1. We won the California State Championship. My high school coach was Coach of the Year, and he was like a stud. And after the season, one of the first things he does is he calls the team that we beat. We played a team from Bakersfield. They took us to overtime. We won in overtime. And he calls the coach and he goes, hey, can you talk me through how you guys made that game so difficult for us? And he just picked his brain, asked a ton of questions. The guy gave him the whole thing because we were never going to play Bakersfield again. We just randomly met in a San Luis Obispo tournament, so it wasn't like we were conference rivals or anything. And I just learned so much from that moment of like, dude, my high school coach, like, I have so much respect for him because like you're fresh off of a state championship and Coach of the Year, and you beat this team too. You beat that coach, and you're just still not above growth. To me, that was like, that set the tone for who I wanted to be as a professional.
My question is not so much about, I guess, the sport, but just like as a former athlete, I kind of had a hard time like transitioning out of basketball. I was just curious as to like, what's your, I guess, mental goals, or like how are you preparing for that next phase of life that happens after like you're not the like elite athlete that everybody knows or that everybody knows who you are? I know I worded that horribly. But.
No, you didn't. That's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. And the answer is pickleball. I would transition into being an elite pickleball player. No, I'm just kidding. I suck at pickleball, but I love it. But okay, for real, the answer to that question for me is, again, I think I'm prepared it's not gonna, I'm not saying it's not gonna be hard. I am fully expecting it to be very hard because I've only known basketball my whole life. And so there's a reality with like, and it's almost one of those things where like, you know, I just turned 36, so it's like, I don't know what basketball, like, if it happens when you're like younger, still in some formative years, you can kind of like figure out some other stuff. But for me, it's like literally all I've known for 36 years of my life. I'm not saying that's gonna be easy, but I do feel like, again, for me, identity and faith has really like played a big part in just feeling really grounded. And I think the temptation is to jump out of, you know, being in that professional basketball scene and then try to become really good at something else. It could be commentating, it could be public speaking, it could be, you know, coaching, or it could be a complete pivot, right? With the Jalen brand, we have so many different things going on. But the first thing I feel like I should do is do nothing. And I think it's like, when you do nothing and you sit in that discomfort, that will give you a stronger sense of who you are. And you'll have a deeper conviction and more clarity when you do transition into the next thing. This is all advice that I actually haven't walked through myself, so I don't even know if it's like, I'm really just like making stuff up right now and just kind of throwing it out there. But that's what I plan to do.
All right. Thanks for everyone's patience. Can we all give Jay a round of applause?
Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.